Hello and welcome to a different kind of video, as we need to do a deep dive into this community balance update that Taragato has posted. And this all spurs from Mech the Dane's video, The Unfunning of Mechware Online. I had them on my channel to do an interview to give some more context to that. And what this is a community-driven weapon balance changes for the game. Now, important to note, this is just for weapons, not for quirks, mobility, consumable, skill tree, new player experience, or matchmaker. Those will be for the future. We're going to try to get done one thing at a time and keep incrementally making changes. Baby steps, people, baby steps. Now, it's important that I get my thoughts out here tonight, as PGI will respond to this, and supposedly responding tomorrow. So if I don't get this out there, my part won't be heard. But let us do a deep dive into this, as they have both this Google Docs with all of their proposed changes all written out with a nice summary, and also a nice spreadsheet so we can look at the changes of everything. We're going to go through this one at a time. So let's start off, because their spreadsheet starts with energy, but their Google Docs start with ballistics. Let's skip the ballistics for a second and we'll look at energy. So they did a large energy rebalance in January, and they changed a lot of laser weapons. Basically, what they're trying to do with their changes to energy weapons is that there's a few ones that are not performing as well as they should, namely some smaller sized ones, the micro lasers, the smalls on the inner sphere side, and things like that. They want to buff those up a little. They want to increase pulse lasers so they provide high damage per tick, so that way they are a good DPS weapon. And they're looking to decrease heavy laser damage with some ghost heat limits adjusted to maintain high alpha heavy lasers, but you're going to have to take more heavy lasers in order to maintain the same alpha because their damage is going down. Some buffs to PPCs, and focusing on their roles, such as usual trade-off compared to lasers, and then also some heat scaling changes, which we'll go over as well. So let's pop over to the spreadsheet that they have, and just let me get rid of the Reddit post so I don't have to constantly flip back to it. So for small lasers, we'll just move this to the side here for the laser section. What's important to lasers here? How they've structured this is that they have the old stats, the new stats, what is the difference between those stats, and then some percentages showing off how much it has changed, and the light blue indicator is if it has been changed. Not if it's been improved or nerfed, but if it has just been changed at all. So it highlights it quite nicely. We have the inner sphere small lasers and the ER small lasers are going to go from 3.25 damage to 4 damage. That's going to increase their DPS, but along the same thing, they're going to increase the cooldown slightly so that the DPS doesn't increase massively comparatively. So while it's a 23% damage increase, it's only 13% DPS increase. So I'm pretty good with these changes. It's pretty similar here for the ER small with 23.08, the same total damage increase, but a little bit less of an increase for cooldown because relatively this one is lower. They're both the same quarter second increase in cooldown, but because this one started at a lower, it's a larger percentage. So it turns out to be about the same. I'm okay with this. Inner sphere smalls and ER smalls, not really that useful right now. They can use a buff. The regular medium laser is going to get a cooldown decrease. Just that's it, increase its DPS. Sure. The regular medium laser has the downside that it's got lower optimal range, and I don't see it as much compared to the ER medium. And I personally don't use anything but the ER medium nowadays because you want that added trading ability, because the majority of MechWarrior Online combat, I feel, takes place in the 300 to 600 meter range, sort of a mid-range fight, where the regular medium with its max at 540 was petering off too early. With the ER medium at 720, it can still fight in that medium range of 300 to 600 and be effective. So yeah, I'm okay with that. But it does have a small cooldown decrease to a 3.5 from 4 for a small increase in DPS as well. Sure. Now we're moving on to ER large. Nothing changes here. Something I would change is I dislike how far some lasers can reach, specifically when you take, say, full range in skill tree and you have a mech with a range quirk. It allows ER larges to reach out with their max range being 1350. Because it's so large and you have percentage-based increases, you can increase that max range to, at times, 1500 and such. It doesn't feel good to be over a kilometer away from somebody and just getting constantly laser pecked from a distance. It's rare, but it occurs on maps such as Boreal Vault when you're doing attacking on invasion, and it just sucks when they can stand it back at their spawn practically and fire at you when you're moving on the gate. It's a rule I would like to put in place, is that all ER technology would be limited in their maximum range, but really good in their optimal range. So I personally would drop the max range here a few hundred meters, maybe bring it down to a max range of around 1,000. That would make me happy, but oh well. Moving on, small pulse laser, again, just a small increase of DPS with the damage increase. No change for the cooldown, so that 14.29 is across the board. That's fine with me. The large pulse laser, a small damage increase to 11, which gives it a 10% damage boost. No changes to its cooldown, which leaves its DPS with that same 10%. And no changes to its duration, and I don't agree with this. I think this 16.42 damage per tick, which is the same thing I call damage per duration on my spreadsheets. I thought the original 14.93 was too high, but taking that to 16.42 I think is far too high. You take a look at the closest thing that clans have, if we fly on down to the clans one, their damage per ticks for large pulse lasers is 12. Their heavy large is just shy of 11. So the closest thing we have as clans is 12, and they're going to have 16.4? I personally would increase this duration a small amount. It doesn't have to be much, but something around 0.7, maybe 0.72. It doesn't feel right to almost double the damage, but only increase the duration from medium pulse lasers by 0.07 seconds. Like, it's a tiny increase in duration, but a massive increase in damage. So that's the only thing I would do here, is increase this to, say, 0.7, 0.72, somewhere in that range, and try to get it to where it's maybe a 13 damage per duration. Maybe 14, because this is almost 15 here. So maybe 14, 13 and a half damage per duration. I would be okay with that. Light PPC, they have increased its velocity a whole bunch by 150 units, which gives it a 12.5% increase in velocity. Decreased its cooldown, which increases its damage per second, and dropped its heat slightly, which will make it so that you can use that increased cooldown, or that decreased cooldown, to fire more rapidly. Sure, I hardly ever use light PPCs. Maybe this could even go further, like 4 lower, 4.3, who knows? But 4.5 is a good change, and we can see how that works. Maybe even increase this more to, say, 1500. Why not? Having a high velocity, once you get to a certain point, is just like, who cares if you have more? It's practically instantaneous. So 1350 is going to just match it with some other PPCs. Why not make light PPC fun and just make it 1500 and have it like fly across the map instantaneously? Snub-nosed PPCs, small drop in heat, and that's it. That's good. Snub-nosed PPCs should be the brawling PPC. This should be the one that you use at close range. Maybe this could even go down further, because they're reducing regular PPCs down to 8 from 9.5. Maybe this should have gone down to 8 as well from 10. It just seems like maybe the snub nose is still not that good to use. Maybe a further heat reduction and then maybe a slight cooldown reduction would be nice. Be able to fire it a little bit more often, make it that heat efficient brawl PPC, because as it stands, oh god, I made it move. The regular PPC here with 1.25 is still more heat efficient per damage done than the snub-nose, and I still feel the snub-nose should be the heat efficient one. Continuing down, ER PPCs, reduction in heat down from 13.5 to 12. You could have done this, or I feel it would have been valid to increase their damage from 10 to 12. That would have been fine for me. They would keep the same heat, just increase the damage up. You would end up having the same damage per heat, but you would give it a little bit more alpha strike if you wanted that on the inner sphere side, because the inner sphere is comparing against the clan PPC, the ER PPC, which has 15 damage, although that is spread between multiple parts. Maybe we could get rid of the fact that that's like the only one that spreads damage and consolidate the PPC so that the clan one is all in one spot, but maybe does 13.5 or 13, and then the inner sphere one is the same thing, all in the same spot, but it only does 12.5. So there is maybe a slight increase when going from inner sphere to clan tech, but generally they're the same weapon across the two boards. I have no problem with this change though, to make your PPCs, god, I did it again, I moved the thing, make them a little bit easier to use. Then heavy PPCs, same thing, just dropping heat, sure. Increasing velocity so they can be used a little bit easier, that's fine with me. Popping down to clan energy weapons. We have the same kind of thing for the small laser here, ER smalls. We have a reduction in heat, making them a little bit easier to use. Sure, the clan ER small have the 5 damage, which is quite good for a small laser. We do enough damage with our small lasers. So having a little bit of heat reduction will mean that, say, 6 to 8 ER small light mechs and stuff like that will be a little bit more heat efficient. I'll enjoy that. I'll throw all of those lasers on a piranha. The clan small pulse laser is getting a small damage increase to 4 to 5 with a small heat increase to go along with it. So the damage per heat is getting better, but it's not as good comparatively if they didn't change the heat. And then it's also getting a small cooldown increase, making the DPS only slightly better after all of those changes. Is changing it to more of a volley weapon, I feel, compared to what it was before, where this was 1.9 seconds. This is now 2.2. Still, it's quite small in terms of their cooldown, but it was a little bit more of a fire everything at once, turn away, scamper away, 6 small pulsator, Arctic cheetah, and that kind of stuff. But with that small increase in duration, which means its damage per tick isn't increasing that much, even though we are increasing the damage. So while you can volley things all at once with the small pulse lasers, you would have to hold them on target a bit longer to be fully effective, and increases the skill you need to use them. Sure. Moving on to clan medium-sized, we're taking the damage from the ER medium lasers from 7 to 6.5. We're also taking the heat down to 5.8, which is basically making the damage per heat the same. So that's probably why that heat change was in there. yeah, that's fine. The alpha strike ability of clan ER mediums is quite strong, so reducing that by 0.5 for each laser is pretty significant when you have, say, 6 of them firing at once. The cooldown has been decreased, giving them a little bit higher DPS, but that basically just negates the earlier change to total damage, meaning that it's only 1.7% change in DPS. So you're the same damage per second, but you're less able to do a good alpha strike with the ER medium lasers. Yeah, I can see that as a good reason why. Just a tiny decrease in damage per tick, because we are reducing this damage here and the duration is staying the same. Medium pulse lasers, no change. Yeah, I feel like they're pretty solid. No arguments there. Clan ER large lasers, we have gotten a cooldown increase to lower their DPS slightly. Alright, same thing here as I'll say for the Inner Sphere ER large lasers and such, and also for basically all of the clan lasers, because I feel like everything in clan is ER, and even the pulse lasers should be part of this change. 1480, along with skill tree and some quirks, you can reach out extremely far with large ER larges. I dislike that. I wish that that was capped more around, say, 1100 instead of 1480. But that's just my opinion, that long-range fire over a kilometer should be purely projectile-based, and that your ability to just sort of turn on a laser and sort of wiggle it over an opponent that's over a kilometer away and just paint some damage across their mech shouldn't be a thing. It should be that if you hit a person at a kilometer away, damn, you're a good shot because you hit them with a ballistic or like a PPC, and that required you to lead them, and that's a difficult thing. It's a skill-based thing. I just think lasers at extreme long distances have no skill to them. The micropulse laser, cooldown decrease, just increasing its DPS, a small increase in range, make it a little bit more easy to use, so you don't have to be like kissing your opponent in order to be able to get your damage out. Yeah, that's great. Increases their usability. Moving on, large pulse lasers, same damage, small decent decrease in heat from 10 to 8.5. This gets you some nice heat per damage there. Small increase in damage per second, interestingly. Even though because we're not changing the damage here. How is this changing? We're not changing the damage. We're not changing the cooldown. Why is DPS increasing? I do not know. Oh, duration is decreasing slightly. So, in case you don't know, lasers start their recycle when the laser finishes burning. So, decreasing duration actually increases DPS slightly. Decrease from 1.09 to 1, yeah, slight increase in damage per tick, that's fine. 12 is about the right number for a large pulse laser. Decreasing the ranges. This is good. This is what I like to see. Decreasing the max more than the optimal. I like this. Do this for the rest of the clan lasers. It should be similar to the clan medium pulse laser. I think this is actually a pretty good number here. So if you have 480, and I just have a calculator on the other screen that I'm doing some calculations on. 480 times 330, 480 meters divided by 330 meters means that the increase to the max range is 45% more than the optimal range. So optimal range is at 100%, max range is at 145%. Instead of normally it would be at 200% if it's like the things like heavy large laser here. Oh God, I did it again. We have 400 to 900. That's a doubling. This is only 45% more. I think all clan lasers should be like the medium pulse, the clan medium pulse. it should be approximately 50% more. So from them going from 600 to 840, which would be 840 divided by 600, that's 1.4. They're going from 700 to 500, 700 divided by 500 to 1.4. They're maintaining that change. So this is good. I like this, but I think we should do that for the rest of the ER technologies. ER medium lasers should not be 400, 800, it'd be 400, 600. This 740 times 1.4, it should be about 1036, maybe 740 times 1.5, 1110. So yeah, that's about where I wanted it, 1100. This is good. Do this more, please. Anyway, heavy lasers. Total damage increase for the heavy smalls, increasing slightly. Nothing else changing in terms of its duration or anything. Heavies already have a fairly large duration at 1.2, so a small increase in DPS for the heavy smalls. Sure, I've never actually really used heavy smalls because I've always felt that they were silly, a little too high duration, but maybe this can get you there. The heavy mediums, damage decrease from 10 to 9, heat decrease to go along with that, so the heat per damage is actually about the same, but then also a cooldown decrease so that the DPS is about the same. Again, lowering the alpha ability of the weapon, which is good. I feel that the clan heavy laser alpha strike on things like the Hellbringer and such are a little too strong. The duration, 1.45 to 1.35, makes it a bit more usable, but with the damage decrease, it is still lower damage per tick. So that's basically this change in duration is to keep the damage per tick the same. I'm okay with that. Heavy large laser, from 18 damage to 17 damage, 1 off. Same thing with the heat, 1 off. Keeps it about the same damage per heat. Just a tiny, under a 1% change. Slightly increasing the cooldown, which will reduce the DPS of the weapon by about 8%, and then not changing the duration, which means that the damage per tick is going down slightly. Sure, I'm fine with that. Heavy large lasers are extremely strong right now, and good to see them changing. And then nothing for the clan ERPPCs or flamers or anything like that. Alright, done the energy weapons. My god, I'm already 23 minutes in. This is going to be a long-ass video. Back to the thing here. I want to talk about these partial rollback to PPC and Gauss Rifle Ghost Heat linking. I don't want to see this. I personally like the fact that Gauss Peep is gone. I never enjoyed it. It was maybe fun to play and felt powerful, but it absolutely sucked to get hit by Gauss Peep combo. Now I know they're talking about like the difference between dual Gauss dual Peep, which you had on things like the Kodiak and the Dire Whale and all those sorts of stuff, and 1 Gauss dual Peep or 2 Gauss 1 Peep. So removing one of those 4 weapons. They basically want to say, yeah, instead of limiting us to 2, which is currently 2 Gauss or 2 Peeps or 1 Gauss and 1 Peep before you get penalty, just increase that by 1, like halfway between what we had before and what we have now. I don't want to see it. I don't like Gauss Peep combo. I think it's too easy to use. I think it's just going to bring back the 1 Peep 2 Gauss Night Jeer, and I don't like that mech existed. So, don't. And again, I will reiterate this, and I know people in the community will vehemently disagree with me, but the energy draw system would handle this better than the stupid Ghost Heat linking rules that you don't have to list out like an entire half a page of random linking combinations in order to fully describe your idea. You could just say, Gauss Rifle has this many points, PPC has this many points. Boom, you're done. And you don't have to describe about, like, 1 light or standard Gauss with any 2 PPCs, 1 light or standard Gauss plus 3 light PPCs, 1 PPC or 2 light or standard Gauss rifles. Like, just all these ors, ands, and just, yeah. Energy draw would be simpler. I know people in the community don't like it, but end my rant there. Moving on to the next thing, which is ballistics. Now, if we look back here at their ballistics, big points of it is ammunition levels are normalized at 200 damage per ton. We'll get into that in a second. Different changes for projectile counts, to reduce the projectile counts to increase the precision of the weapons. We got some velocity increases for AC-20s of multiple types. Autocannons, ultra autocannons have been changed to make them more reliable but maintain their current DPSs even when double tapping. Cooldown buffs for LBXs to make them have improved DPS. Some slot reductions for the Inner Sphere LBX 20, I totally agree with, and some other stuff. We're going to get into those stats in the spreadsheet. So first is the Inner Sphere stuff, and we'll have to move around a little bit. Let's first just cover off ammo per ton here, because we're going to have to move back and forth to cover some of the clan stuff. Ammo per ton, if you don't know, is different per gun in the game currently. So for example, currently the AC2s have 2 damage and, where we go, AC2, 2 damage, 75 shots per ton, and if you do the math, 2 damage plus 75 shots is 150 damage per ton. But currently, the AC10, of course, does 10 damage and has 20 shots, which means 200 damage per ton. The AC10, and basically all versions of the AC10, have higher damage per ammunition ton than anything else. And basically what they're doing here is standardizing that. And what that's going to mean is that you're getting 33% more damage per ton with your weapons that you take for ballistics. This means you can take less tons of ammo and get the same result. So that frees up tonnage for ballistic mechs. So where previously I would maybe want to take 2.5, 3 tons per AC5, like an Ultra 5 on my gun. 2.5 to 3? Maybe 2. Maybe 2 to 2.5. I can save a half a ton or a ton per Ultra 5 on my mech. Because then also the skill tree increases, because those increase percentage, not a flat amount. By increasing these up, this will mean that instead of it being 150 times 20%, which would be 150 times 1.2, 180 rounds, this would be 240 rounds. I mean, 220. I'm crazy. No, 240, yeah, for 20%. 200 times 1.2. I'm not crazy, 240. So you're going to have an increase of 60 rounds per ton with full skill tree investment, which is almost like a full ton of AC2. This is a significant increase that will vastly reduce the amount of ammo you have to take on ballistics. I am fine with this change. I would like to see it. But now we've talked about the ammo per ton, let's get back over to the stuff. First, let's talk about ultras, because they require me to go back and forth. Ultra autocannons have a decrease in the rate at which they fire. So Ultra AC2 is going from 0.72 to 0.75, so it's going to fire 4% slower. However, to go with that, we're reducing the weapon DPS, and that's if you don't double tap, we're reducing weapon DPS. But if you do double tap, what they are doing is they are decreasing the amount of times you're going to jam. So while you are firing less often, you're more likely to keep firing, and therefore the average jam DPS, so your double tap DPS, is going to remain basically the same. Small increase for Ultra 2s, that's fine. Ultra 2s could use it. But basically no change for 5s, 10s, and 20s. So this means that while you're firing less often, you're more reliable and you're more likely to keep firing. I like that. I hate jams. I actually wish that they would just change the jam system altogether to one of two options, either a clip-based, such as, say, auto-loaders from World of Tanks, if you have played that, where you, say, load in 5 shots, you fire off your 5 shots, and then you take a long time to load in another 5 shots, then you fire off your 5 shots, so that you have a definite burst fire with no jamming. It's predictable. You know when you're going to need to reload. You can trigger a reload early if you need to. There's some mind games with there of, is he out of ammo? He's an ultra. Okay, counter shots. Boom, 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 boom. Charge! They're out of ammo. Which is sort of like the Dirty Harry, like, you feel lucky punk sort of moment, because there's counterplay to it. Alternatively, what was the other idea? There's the clip-based, and then there's the heat-based system, which is kind of like what they're doing with rotaries, where you fill up a bar, and then once that bar is full, you start to jam. Since rotaries have taken that, I think the clip-based would be better for ultras, but that's a pipe dream. I don't expect them to change any mechanics with this change, if they do anything of these. Just numbers are way easier to change, because that's just changing things in the game that already exists. But anyway, moving on. So I'm fully in agreement with all of the DPS cooldown and jam chance changes they're doing for all the ultra autocannons. Good shit. Coming down, slight increase in DPS for slight increase in DPS for LBXs with a decrease in their cooldown. So they fire more often. Spread has been slightly decreased for the 2s and the 5s to make them more useful at their optimal ranges. Because definitely for LBXs, it was, your range says 700. Yeah, no, it's more like 500. You know, you have to be a lot closer to be able to use it effectively. Put those pellets into one section. And then, really great, LB20s down a slot. I love this because LB20s are just silly at 11 slots. Because you can't fit it in a side torso with a light engine. You can't fit it in an arm. It should be able to fit in an arm. It's just bring it down so it's the exact same size as a regular 20 or even an Ultra 20. Yes, do it. This is just no-brainer for me, taking down the LB20 to that. That way I can do dual side torso LB20s in my Warhammer. Yes, I want to run fast with that build. But otherwise, just a slight cooldown decrease for the LB20s, and again, slight velocity decrease. I'm okay with that, because you're really not using the LB20 out at 1080. No way. You're using it at 250, 300, not 360. So you don't need the velocity to do that. That's fine. Rotaries, they are decreasing their heat to make them a little bit more efficient. That's great. I like that a lot, because I found the rotaries quite hot of a weapon. Sure, they have amazing DPS. The Rotary 5, 10 DPS. Holy crap, that's amazing. But they are quite hot, so their heat per second is very high, and they can overheat your mech quite quickly. Increase in velocity in order to make them a little bit more usable at their optimal ranges. Yes, please, even more. Like, just increase it. The 2s, God, I did it again, where I drew from the left and it caused my whole thing to move. The 2s are like 2,000, 2,000, 2,000. Ultra 2s, Rotary 2s, it's not even firing a 2 damage shell. It's firing at like a point whatever damage shell. Give it 2,000 as well. Buff it. I like it. Buff it higher. 1,200, make it more like 1,300. Make it match the regular 5s for the Rotary 5. Just increase it. But they're also removing the spread, so it goes where you point it, which I didn't even know these have a spread. That's good information to have. Yeah, totally agree with that spread changes and the velocity changes, if not a little bit higher. This should be around 2K, this should be around maybe 1350. Moving on to Gauss rifles. Now, Gauss rifles, like Gauss, increasing its velocity by a whole bunch, 25% to 2,500 velocity. Holy shit, that'll fly like a bat out of hell. What they're basically doing is they're trying to push this, as well as an increase in its max and optimal range, to a long-range specialty weapon. Sure, that's fine. I still don't think anyone's going to take it. Like Gauss rifle, 8 damage for 12 tons. Regular Gauss rifle, 15 damage for 15 tons. This is a 1-to-1 damage per ton ratio. This is like 0.6 or something. 0.6, 0.65, somewhere around there. No. When I could just spare 3 more tons, get a regular Gauss rifle, and still have 660 range? Majority of MechWarrior Online engagements take between 300 and 600, like I said before. There's no reason to have 900 range, unless you're like sitting at the back of Boreal Vault sniping. Like, it's just not useful in your average match. So while I get the idea that this is going to be a long-range weapon, and I totally support that, and I would even say, like, yeah, go crazy with this. Make it 3,000 units. Make it a thing like a laser from across the battlefield. Maybe that's a little too much, but you know what I mean. It's just not that good at 12 tons for 8 damage. And you got a couple choices. Maybe raise the damage by a point or two to, say, 9 or 10. That would increase the damage per ton to a 0.8, 0.7 something at least. 8.5 maybe, if you're generous. That'd be fine. Or this may sound crazy. Reduce the tonnage. Why is this 12? Drop it to 11? Match it with the LB10? Maybe regular 10 is 12? Maybe because the regular AC10 is 12 with 10 damage. Maybe make this 11 with 8? 10 with 8? I don't know. Just, I feel like either the tons or the damage needs to change on this before I'll even consider the light Gauss rifle as a weapon. But that's just me. Moving on, light Gauss rifle. Not regular Gauss rifle, regular Gauss rifle. Decrease in cooldown, meaning its DPS goes up about 10%. Sure, whatever. Got the heavy Gauss. What changed on this was some range. They basically undid the previous range buffs. I totally agree with that. I don't know why those range buffs actually went in the first place. It keeps the same maximum range, it just decreases the optimal range. Yeah, I'm good with that. I totally agree. Light machine gun, we have a DPS boost. All machine guns, we have a DPS boost of about 25%, with a heavy machine gun being about 35%, which basically is just an increase in damage and nothing else for these weapons, because they have no cooldown, they have no heat. Okay, I can see why, because the Inner Sphere side doesn't have the machine gun boats that the clan can currently do. We've got the crit links, we've got the crit Arctic Cheetah, we've got the Piranha, the king of machine gun right now. What do the Inner Sphere have? An Ember? 4 machine guns? Is there a light with 6 machine guns? I don't know. Like, they just don't have enough. So, giving them a little bit stronger machine guns will sort of help match the clan side of it. As well, their machine guns are a little bit heavier because they are. Their light machine guns and regular machine guns are half a ton, where ours are a quarter. Their heavy machine guns is 1 ton, where I believe ours are 1/2. I say ours for clans because I'm a clan. I identify as a clan. But yeah, I'm fine with this. This brings it so that an array of light machine guns on the Inner Sphere side is closer to an array of light machine guns on the clan side. That's fine. A lot of these changes are mirrored down in the clan section, except for some big things, which I maybe didn't even get through for... The IS section stayed the same because they had the lowered numbers already. So like the number, they fire how many shells. So like the Ultra 10 fires 2 shells. The Ultra 20 fires 3 shells. They basically took those numbers and copied them over to the clans. So they are reducing the amount of shells that are fired. So the clan Ultra 5 would do 100% increased damage, but really it's because instead of doing 2.5 damage shells, it's 1 5 damage shells. So the total amount of damage stays the same, but they're just decreasing the amount of shells, making them a little bit more useful. Sure. Whatever. I'm fine with that. Small decrease in heat for the Ultra 5. Maybe just to 1.4 to start with. I feel that maybe 1.35 is a little much. When we were around 1.4 would be good. Same cooldown as before. A tiny DPS increase because of the lowered shell count, I believe. Yeah, because the duration is gone. Because there used to be same thing with lasers. They don't start recharging until they fully burn. Same thing with these burst ultra cannons, that they don't start reloading until the full thing is burst out. So reducing the shell count actually increased the DPS slightly. And they did the same thing for all the clans with the increasing damage per ton for the ammo. So, like I said before, I agree with that completely. So they've decreased all this number firing. That's fine. They've slight increases in DPS just because of the decreases in the number per fire. They reduce the heat on the clan Ultra 20. They slightly increase the heat on the clan Ultra 10. Okay. Yeah, I can agree with all these changes. That this is correct. This clan Ultra 10 2.5, I believe it's the same now as the IS Ultra 10 2.5, right? 3.5 for the IS Ultra 10. Huh. Maybe that should be the same. 3.5 here. Clan Ultra 10. Maybe a little too toasty. Maybe the IS version is too toasty. Maybe the clan version is too cold. It is being an increase by 25%, but still, be something to look at. Moving on, LBs. Increase in their DPS through their cooldown. That's fine. Lowering their spread to make them more usable at their effective ranges. That's fine. The Ultra 20. These were the regular cannons. The Ultra 20. Oh, right. Sorry. My mistake. The Ultra 10 for the clan side is 3.5. This is the normal 10. My mistake. So that is good that this is cooler than the Ultra version, because the Ultra version can double tap and have more effectiveness that way. That's fine. The same changes here with the DPS and the crit changes, the jam changes over here, and that's fine. I agree with all of that. Then the heavy machine guns are the only thing that changes out of machine guns for a slight DPS increase. Oh, so many changes. 45 minutes in. Last part, missile. We've got some base spread reduction for clan SRMs. We got some damage and heat for IS MRMs. Oh, and they're well adjusted at presence, but their speed is large enough to make them brawl weapons, and we recommend speed buffs and some decrease in spread, I believe. And then, interestingly here, they're talking about ATMs. They're very strong at a lower range bracket, which is very nice. I love using ATMs to brawl, sort of the 120 to 300 range. And we want to maintain that strength. We believe they're overpowered against lights and mediums. I can see that. They do a lot of damage per missile at those ranges. They basically want them to be more of like a siege type weapon to go against heavier mechs, like heavies and assaults. So they're saying keep their effectiveness, but just make it so that they turn slower. So that way a fast moving light can actually dodge the missiles. I'm okay with that. And to improve effectiveness of missiles, they're buffing Artemis bonus to 28%, splits the difference between the old skill tree state 33% and the present 25%, so that we get a little bit better bonus. So let's take a look at that. We'll start off with the inner sphere missiles up here. We've got a slight heat reduction for 2s. All right, I don't really use 2s. I think they're just too small to be effective. But the Artemis bonus is being increased on them. We've got velocity and just spread buffs for MRMs. So a little bit less spread on all the MRMs. I could have maybe seen this buff to 500 for velocity. Make them a little bit easier to land. I would have been okay with that. But I can see why the decrease in spread would be useful. It's only like less than 10% here. I don't know. I'd maybe drop that a little bit more. Maybe drop it to 3.9 sort of thing. To drop it like 10%. LRM5, decreasing the heat. Basically all the LRMs were decreasing the heat. Which is okay, because then you have to take less DHS, which means that you have to take less tonnage, and that's the big difference between clan and inner sphere LRMs is clans are half the weight, so they get a lot of weight savings. So with this, you maybe have to take less heat sinks, which gives you that little bit of weight savings back, so that they're more equal. Maybe not perfectly, but a little bit better. And then all the way down to clan missile, which we have ATMs, looks like being the only thing changed in clan missile. Well, we got some spread changes here for 4 and 6s. Alright, we can reduce the spread slightly, make them a little bit more usable. I'm fine with that. There's no other changes over here. We've got the cooldown decrease for ATM 3s, just increasing their DPS because they're falling behind their equivalencies of 6s and 9s and 12s. Yeah, works for me. My god, that was a lot of changes. But I think that's it. Even if this goes through exactly as it is, I would be okay with it. The only thing I truly disagree with, and like the rest of this, like little minor changes of like 5% or 10% in terms of the weapons, whatever. In the grand scheme of things, there's not really going to be much of a point. Like I don't want to say much of a point. It's not going to be like, this is not the hill I want to die on, as Val and Mech the were putting it the other day. I don't want to fight people over these. This is just okay changes. The one thing the hill I want to die on is the rollback of PPC Gauss Rifle, Ghost Heat Link. No, I don't want to see that meta come back. I hated that meta. Even if you're saying, but it's not going to be 60 damage per shot, it's only going to be 45. It's 45 damage pinpoint across the map with no warning. No ability to twist it. No, I don't like that. Even with the clan heavy large laser meta we have now, you do have somewhat of a chance to twist that damage off because it's a second and a half of duration on the heavy larges. You can actually twist the weapons away, so that's fine. But no, I don't want Gauss PPC. That's the hill I'm going to die on here. But that's it. Overall, I am okay with these changes. And I'm looking forward to PGI's response. This is big. This is, if they see how they respond to this, if they accept a lot of these changes and we go forward with them, that's gonna be big. Like, that'll be a big thing for the game. The last time we had like a real big community idea that was put into and maybe gotten consideration for this was the heat scale public tests with energy draw. Those didn't do that quite well, but it was the last time we had a big community idea get tested and get a recognition from the devs. So this is going to be cool. This was long, approximately 50 minutes, way too long. Thanks for putting up with me and listening to me rant for almost an hour. I need a drink of water as my voice is about to die, but Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. More mech videos coming tomorrow, and good hunting.